Okay, it's now 6 p.m. We'll call our meeting in order. Begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah, roll call, please, Marie.
Here.
Here. Here. Here. Here.
Here, thank you, Maureen. As we begin tonight's WRPS Board of Education meeting, I'll take a few minutes to go over expectations of behavior at all board meetings. First off, this is a meeting of the WRPS Board of Education that is open to the public and not an open forum for questions and answers. Our legal obligation is to conduct the business of the district in an open forum during a meeting that has been publicly noticed in accordance with Wisconsin state statutes. If constituents have specific questions, they may be submitted to either the superintendent or the appropriate district director using contact information that can be found on the district's website. This board operates under the Speak Your Piece Civility Project model as adopted in 2008 and incorporated into board policy, and we expect meetings to operate with civil discourse and respect modeled by all. This is a meeting where decisions are made that impact local WRPS residents and the students attending our schools. We are independent individuals who make decisions we feel are in the best interest of our local schools and community, given all information available. At times, that information may come to us in the form of public comment, which is why we appreciate hearing the viewpoints of the public that we represent. While we will not prohibit non-residents from commenting in a public meeting, we can say that the opinions of the parents and taxpayers of the WRPS system are of far greater importance to us than that of non-residents. Before you begin speaking, I will be asking if you are either the parent or guardian of a WRPS student or a taxpayer within our district. If you choose not to provide this information, we will interpret this to mean that you must reside outside of district boundaries and/or have no children attending our schools. We will only accept public comment on items listed on the meeting agenda and only during the designated public comment time. If your commentary pertains to item not on the meeting agenda, I will ask you to stop and we will move on to the next speaker. While members of the public have every right to attend an open board meeting to observe and listen to elected school board officials conducting their business, they do not have the right to interrupt and otherwise engage in conduct that disrupts the meeting or the board's ability to conduct its business. The public's ability to comment is not a right. Rather, our board chooses to allow it as another mode by which to hear the public weigh in on a topic the board is considering. However, this board reserves the right to modify or suspend public comment if individuals cannot control themselves in a reasonable capacity. If individuals are disrupting the meeting, I will ask them to stop. If they choose not to stop, I will ask them to leave the premises. If they choose not to leave, I will contact law enforcement to have them removed. Now, as we moved in the public comment portion of our meeting, each person participating will have 3 minutes to speak. Keep your comments civil in tone and content, as individuals bear the personal risk if comments made are defamatory, slanderous, or otherwise harmful to another individual. Our first public comment tonight is from Lynn Derry. Hi, Lynn. Do you have children enrolled at WRPS, or do you reside within our attendance area?
Yes.
Thank you.
I see on the agenda that you're going to be checking out the COVID mitigation and the mask mandate again. You say you follow the science. We have been for months telling you what it's doing to the children. You don't care. So you follow the science. The CDC is not on board yet with unmasking people. But you're talking about doing away with the masks? Kudos. Thank you for finally listening to reason. Because all of you signed off on your individual vote and gave it to Mr. Brorin. You did that. You said you would own it. Someone very near dear to me had a tonsillectomy, more than likely due to having to breathe the crap in, their toxins in 8 hours a day. A week later, they had to be rushed to surgery for blood clots and bleeding. This is on you. You said you'd own it, you own it. In the future, we're going to be watching you a lot closer. And if you infringe on the rights of the children with a medical device or any medical, say the vax, whatever, we will be looking into a criminal activities because that is against their rights. And the parents have the ultimate say of their children. So, you guys, you're on notice. We're done. Thank you.
Thank you. Anita Jasison. Hey, Anita, do you have children enrolled at WRPS, or do you reside within our attendance area?
Yeah, I reside in Wisconsin Rapids.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I wrote this a couple months ago. I didn't have a chance to read it, but it's still very relevant. There's been many things troubling me that make no sense. I have eyes, I can see. Remember this past summer and even up to now, you know, people were sick and tired of lockdowns, distancing, masking. I saw and participated in many events where hundreds and often thousands of people came together and enjoy life, be among people, just as God intended. There was no mass illness resulting from this, no people dropping dead in the streets or anything of that nature occurring. No super spreading of COVID like they predicted. People, particularly children, were mingling, smiling, breathing freely as God intended. Fast forward to the school year. Fear was once again instilled with in these young minds. And why is that? Nothing's changed. These children, especially the younger ones, are being taught to fear other human beings, like everyone is some type of typhoid Mary that if they come into contact with them, they'll become seriously ill or die. And that's proven to be not true. Why is that? It is already proven that masks don't work, and it harbors harmful bacteria. Distancing doesn't work, and most of all, the experimental injection that's being pushed doesn't work. They keep dangling the carrot, and they keep moving the goalpost. All this is in plain sight, yet it's being ignored. It's also well known that children are minimally affected, no matter what the so-called variants. So why is this psychological torture still being perpetuated? There are mounds of evidence and skyrocketing cases of depression, suicide, and drug use among our young people. They cannot cope. There is also mounting evidence of harmful side effects and even deaths resulting from getting the still experimental injection, and there is no informed consent. These children are being scarred for life, both physically and mentally, to say nothing of any long-term effects. There is no concrete reason for this. Why are so many of you willing to sacrifice the well-being and future of our children in order to push various agendas? The money trail is easy to follow when you look at it with an open mind, and I don't like what I see. It all ties into the brainwashing of these children who are being taught what to think instead of how to think. The introduction of CRT, SEL, or however it wants to be dressed up into pretty words and being redefined are very concerning of what all this is doing to these young minds. And I am very afraid for the future of this country if all this is allowed to continue. I truly believe that your school report cards would vastly improve if your fine teachers would be allowed to teach the basics instead of filling these young minds with all this unnecessary garbage. It does nothing but instill fear, suspicion, and confusion. They are free-thinking individuals who should be allowed to think for themselves, not trained what to think. Science isn't science if it is not questioned. Thank you.
Thank you. Adam Stublaski. Hi, Adam.
Hey.
Do you have children enrolled at WRPS? Do you reside within our attendance area?
Both.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you. I understand it's not a right as you've instructed us earlier in this meeting. I also understand that I'm to be presented before you to grovel at your feet as you stand above me. Now, a trauma-informed care advocate would annotate that this is not an appropriate way to deal with the public. there's plenty of other venues in our school district that would be more appropriate where we could be equals and have a conversation. That's where we're falling short. And why do I say that? I'm talking about COVID. We've talked about COVID. We've talked about the mitigation maneuvers and beliefs that you've proposed. Nice to know that the timing, day before the primary, hey, whatever. I'm proud of you for taking it up. Even though the CDC hasn't said that this is the time to do it, as the superintendent did note on the local radio station, I agree with you. It should be taken up. It needs to be removed. We've heard so many reasons, and we've heard from numerous doctors. Now, I realize they're not government doctors, and the government knows best, but they are doctors. They do have their PhDs, and they are out there voicing their concerns as the science dictates. I would say that you should be commended for this. I would also commend you for the mitigation recommendations that you've presented. It's nice to have something that's quantitative here, something where you outline what the protocols are. I would note that it does seem a little disingenuous to hold unvaccinated individuals accountable and say that they need to quarantine longer than anybody else when science has proven, as the state government doctors indicate, that people that are vaccinated get and spread the disease, just like everybody else. So to mandate that they hold and need to be quarantined for longer, I have questions with that. But I do appreciate and applaud you for your willingness to take up this issue today. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Heidi Koleski. Hi, Heidi. Do you have children enrolled at WRPS, or do you reside within our attendance area?
Yes.
Thank you.
Under 11B on tonight's agenda, I would like you to support moving to mask optional as well as stopping the contact tracing and quarantining at the same time. The additional 2.5 weeks of possible forced quarantining for being too close to someone is going to add to our children's fears and anxieties. Up to this point, I have been told that you are just following the health department and the medical professionals. But there are so many medical professionals that don't agree with all of these mitigation protocols. They've been trying to get people to understand the risks far outweigh the benefits. Children are the least at-risk population for COVID, but are still facing some of the most draconian mitigation policies. Reasons given are because, low chance of COVID complications doesn't mean no chance, or that kids have to do this in the name of protecting their elders. We've inflicted more harm to children in exchange for less harm for adults. In the focus of the one threat of COVID, we've let so many other things flourish: learning problems, depression, anxiety, behavioral problems, suicide. For the last almost 2 years, we've heard kids are resilient. It has been used to justify the cancellation of proms, dances, sporting events, and seasons, as well as forced quarantining and isolation. It is not a child's job to be resilient. It is a parent and educator's job to be resilient for them, to spare them from our fears and worries. I get to leave here shortly to hear my daughter with the Wisconsin Rapids Band play, so unfortunately, I will miss the discussion and vote on these mitigation measures. I want you to think about these 2 words: conformity, doing what everyone else is doing, regardless of what is right. Morality, doing what is right, regardless of what everyone else is doing. Please think of our children and vote not only to move to optional masking, but to also stop contact tracing and quarantine effective February 16th. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move into our student representative report. Madeline, how are you doing this month?
Good. So first of all, I have the mock trial team competed at their regional competition this weekend and finished 4th overall. The student council submitted their Spirit of Excellence, which is basically a program of everything we do at the school, from community service to sportsmanship to extracurricular activities. So we submitted that, and we won our Region 2 bracket. So we'll be recognized that at a Bucks game at the end of February. The fire and ice dance was postponed, so though the dance and the extra, or like the Spirit Week are taking place. The dance is March 11th or 12th, I think, March 12th. Athletics are also winding down, and playoff season is starting for basketball and hockey. And there are 14 days left in Tri-2 before we move on.
Once again, the year goes by very quickly, at least to us older people. So I'm sure senioritis is starting to set in. Thank you for the report. I will move on to approval of the minutes.
I would make a motion that the regular Board of Education meeting minutes of January 10th, 2022 be approved as printed.
Second.
We have a motion, a second, to approve the regular Board of Education meeting minutes of January 10th, 2022. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Those minutes are approved. That takes us to our committee reports. Mary, Ed Services.
Okay, thanks, John. The Ed Services Committee held its regular monthly meeting on Monday, February 7th, 2022. There was no public comment. There were 3 consent agenda items. Would anyone like any of those held out? Okay, then I move to approve the following. Let's see. Policy 380.1, therapy dogs in schools, and policy 380, animals in the school for first reading. Roxanne Schultz explained the benefits of adopting the policy given the increased need for a variety of social and emotional supports in classrooms throughout the district. If approved, policy 380, animals in the school, would be revised to make a cross-reference to the therapy dog policy. Next, we went on to ES2. To approve the 2022-23 Wisconsin Rapids Public Schools Strategic Plan. The administration provided narratives underneath each objective within the draft plan to detail the progress made and/or reasoning behind changes being recommended. Committee members had an opportunity to ask questions about the plan, and specific points of conversation occurred around it. And then we went on to ES3. To approve the LEA ESSER 3 grant funding plan. Roxanne reviewed the proposed plan outlining the work performed by an ESSER 3 planning committee that included staff members in a variety of roles from across the district at both the elementary and secondary levels. As the ESSER 3 planning committee met, the focus for funding use has been on how the districts can make the biggest impact on the greatest number of students to contribute to their success moving beyond the COVID-19 pandemic. The committee's concerns and feedback will be taken into account moving forward. While the plan must be submitted by March 11th, adjustments to the plan are likely to occur throughout the 2-year period of the plan's existence. And last, a landing page dedicated to the ESSER 3 funding plan has been developed on the WRPS website, and a survey for stakeholder feedback from parents, guardians, students, staff members, and members of the community has been linked to the page. Feedback will be collected from February 7th through the 28th, 2022, and then reviewed by the ESSER 3 Planning Committee to determine if any adjustments might be helpful to incorporate in the overall plan. Roxy intends to bring an update to the Educational Services Committee meeting on March 7th, 2022, since feedback will have been gathered and any additional changes being recommended by the ESSER 3 Planning Committee based upon the feedback will be available. Then we went on to the 2 updates that we had. The first one was the Achievement Gap Reduction Mid-Year Report, postponed to March 2022. Due to high student and teacher absences caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, a number of schools have been unable to complete the necessary screening to compile the report. As a result, the report will be postponed to March 2022 when complete information is available from the district schools. And our second update was the student summer travel. 2 student trips planned for summer 2022 are being postponed to summer 2023. A decision to postpone a trip to Ecuador and the other trip to France was made by January 31st, 2022, in order to minimize the amount of financial loss that students and families would experience. Senior students who are missing out on the opportunity to be involved in trips will have the opportunity to participate in summer 2023 if they are interested. And with that, I move to approve the Ed Services Committee meeting minutes of
We have to approve the agenda items first.
That's right, sorry about that.
No problem.
So you approve the 3 agenda items as explained?
So move.
Second.
Okay, we have motion a second to approve ES 1, 2, and 3. All those in favor, please say aye.
I have one comment, if I may. The therapy dogs is certainly a little out of the ordinary, and but I've seen magic things happen when a therapy dog is used in a classroom or other situations. It has a common humanity of about it, the dogs, that makes the place more human and more acceptable to everybody. So I'm glad we're trying that idea.
Thank you for your comment, Larry.
Okay, so with that, I will move to approve the Educational Services Committee meeting minutes of the February 7th, 2022 meeting.
Second.
We have a motion a second to approve the meeting minutes of the Educational Service Committee meeting of February 7th, 2022. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Minutes are approved. Thank you for the report, Mary. Move on to business service. Troy will be giving that report tonight.
Thanks, John. So Business Services Committee meeting was held last Monday, February 7th, 2022. The meeting was called to order at 7:13 p.m. and no public comment was present at the committee meeting. Out of the meeting, we have 7 consent agenda items. I'll go through them all here. I'll start with BS1. This relates to overall board policies. With the Quadplex and Rapids Area Sports Complex project nearing completion and anticipated use of the space beginning this spring, a facility use policy to cover rules, regulations, and rental fees affiliated with the complex has been developed. Board Policy 830.2 pertaining to facility use policy for the Rapids Area Sports Complex is a new policy being recommended, and 2 other policies related to facility use. 830, which is the use of school facilities, and 830.1, facility use for the Performing Arts Center, have slight modifications and are being recommended as a result of our new policy here. So with that being said, the committee recommends and I move approval of Board Policy 830.2, Facility Use Policy for the Rapids Area Sports Complex, Policy 830, Use of School Facilities, and Policy 830.1, Facility Use Policy for the Performing Arts Center, all for first reading. The next item pertains to our lease agreement with the Cesa 5 for the Vesper Community Academy facility. Cesa 5 leases the Vesper Community Academy facility for the operation of Wood County Alternative School. The lease agreement for the 22-23 fiscal year needs renewal. So with that item, the committee recommends, and I move that the lease agreement with Cesa 5 for use of the Vesper Community Academy facility for the 22-23 school year at an amount of $24,000 be recommended for approval. Our next item, BS3, pertains to the special education wheelchair van purchase for approval. The district is in need of a replacement special education wheelchair van. The current 2006 model van has not been reliable. Ed and Aaron reached out to our local Chrysler dealer, and they could not identify a wheelchair van for purchase. The state of Wisconsin has a contract, and the preferred vendor is Ewald Motors in Oconomowoc. Ewald Motors was able to identify a van available, and with that, the committee recommends and I move approval to purchase a Chrysler Voyager special education wheelchair van from Ewald Motors of Oconomowoc LLC for a total net cost of $41,458.50 to be funded from the special education budget. BS4 pertains to purchasing Chromebook cases. There is a need to continue to purchase Chromebook cases as older cases become worn. The district is seeing an increased breakage of screens at the middle school, and it has been determined that a large number of broken screens are a result of students taking their Chromebooks out of the current cases. The current cases are extremely bulky and don't allow for easy access to put into backpacks. So a slimmer case is being recommended that will allow for easier access. Few models have been tested with students, and it's determined that the Ninja 21 case from Bump Armor offers the best protection and placement. So the committee recommends, and I move to purchase 1,500 Chromebook cases for Rams and LHS from Bump Armor at a cost of $20.19 per unit, for a total cost of $30,291.91 to be funded from the 21-22 Technology and Curriculum Referendum budget. Our next item, BS5, pertains to purchasing the actual Chromebooks themselves. Chromebooks are needed for incoming freshmen at LHS and replacing the aging Chromebooks at Rams, which are at this time 4 years old. Chromebooks from 8th grade that are still usable will be repurposed for use at Central Oaks Academy and the elementary schools. With this item, the committee recommends, and I move purchasing 800 Chromebooks, 11 G8 EEs for Rams and LHS from PDS at a cost of $253.78 per unit. This brings the total cost to $203,024 to be funded from the 21-22 Technology and Curriculum Referendum budget. The next item, BS6, pertains to Chromebook purchasing for the staff. In order to keep staff members current with technology tools, purchase of 100 Chromebooks is being recommended for professional staff members at Rams. 75 Chromebooks will be assigned to professional staff. 25 will be used as spares and loaners for new incoming staff. So for BS6, the committee recommends, and I move, the purchase of 100 ASUS Flip Chromebooks from PDS at a cost of $594.78 per unit for a total cost of $59,478 to be funded from the 21-22 Technology and Curriculum Referendum budget. Our last item, BS7, pertains to computer purchases. The computer workstations in the computer science labs at LHS are in need of upgrading. A more robust computer is needed for these labs due to the nature of their use and associated curriculum. In addition to labs 106 and 108, it has been discovered lab 124 is also in need of updating to more robust computers. The committee recommends, and I move, that the purchase of 90 HP ProDesk 400 desktop computers from PDS at a cost of $870 per unit for a total cost of $78,300 be funded from the 21-22 Technology and Curriculum Referendum budget. Did anybody want any of the items held out?
I just have some questions concerning BS1. Would you like those questions now? Okay. On 830.2 on page 2 at the very bottom, it talks about rental groups may have the ability to offer alcoholic beverages under specific circumstances. What would those circumstances be? What would our liability be? And who would have the alcohol license or license to sell alcohol?
Yeah, so that would be accomplished the same way it is via the rec center. And the agreement would be via a separate lease that would govern the use of the facility. I already verified with our attorney, as we did with the rec center, that that is plausible. The individual that is engaging in the lease with the district would be responsible for ensuring proper licensing, getting liquor licenses and all of that stuff, as well as the basic bar is that it's a non-kid related event. So think adult baseball, softball sort of leagues that might be there on the site, and there would be a separate lease agreement that would govern that circumstance with an entity that has to be a legal entity standalone.
Okay. So there's no additional liability on the part of the district?
That is correct, no.
Okay. On the next page, page 3, on number 3, it just says a WRPS employee must be present whenever the facility is being used. Any employee?
No, so there'll be specific individuals that have knowledge of the facility and its use, And so I think we're leaving it open-ended such that it could be an administrator, Lincoln administrator, it could be the athletic director, it could be an athletic assistant, or it could be an individual that we train explicitly to be present at the time. So it will be kind of grab bag, and that's what circumstances are for our facility use. One would argue that it's also plausible that over time, I wouldn't say on the get-go for the first year of operation, but over time, there might be contacts with entities that we have standing relationships with where they rent several times a year or, regularly, in which case we may then have the ability to limit our contact and know that it's going to be run appropriately and provide emergency contact numbers and support in that regard. But on the front end, there would be school personnel associated with the operation.
And then, just reading through this, the Lincoln High School Athletic Facilities Coordinator has a plethora of duties.
Correct.
Is this going to be taken over by the athletic director, or are we looking at another position or another part-time position? Do you have anything?
Yep, in the short term, for the first year of operation, we are going to utilize it as an opportunity to kind of gauge where we're at. And it's not going to be used to its fullest potential this first year, one would guess. As word spreads and we get more interest in the use of the facility and identify, explicitly how much and how frequently that will be used, that may change, where we're looking at a standalone position similar to what we have for the PAC. But as it stands right now, you'll recall that by board action, several months ago now, more than a few, you took action on establishing some additional time for the assistant activities coordinator. And that is because of their role here in the inaugural year with the Quadplex. And then clearly there's going to be some purview of Lincoln staff and the athletic department in particular as that operates.
That's all.
I guess I would just like to add to BS3 with the special ed wheelchair van, that has a 2 wheelchair capacity. It is a rear load instead of a side load. So if we did have the need to have 2 wheelchairs in there, the seat can be folded down and we could actually move 2 students at a time. We don't currently have the ability to do that.
Thank you for that clarification on that one, John. The balance of the meeting consisted of purchasing updates and invoices on the Quadplex and overall technology and referendum items. Does anybody have any questions looking at the invoices and purchase?
We have to approve the agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll back up. So with that, I move to approve BS, kind of a trend tonight. I move to approve BS, items BS1 through BS7 for approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve BS1 through BS7. We have roll call, please, Maureen?
Yes.
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 Yes, thank you, Maureen.
Right, perfect. So the balance of the meeting, we had a slew of purchasing updates and invoices looking at the Quadplex and overall technology and referendum items. Anybody have any questions or need clarification on any item? With that, I submit the balance of our Business Services Committee meeting of February 7th, the minutes for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the meeting minutes of the Business Service Committee of February 7th, 2022. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The minutes are approved. Thank you for the report, Troy. Next, we have Personnel Services. Sandy.
Personnel Services met last Monday, February 7th, and we had no public comment from that meeting, but we had 7 consent agenda items, and they are as follows. The committee recommends and I move to approve the one non-representative staff appointment, and this is going to be a coordinator for IEPs, and we'll all recognize the name Steve Smith, and that's Yahoo! 2, the committee recommends and I move to approve the 12 support staff appointments. 3, the committee recommends and I move to approve the 3 professional staff resignations. 4, the committee recommends and I move to approve the 6 support staff resignations. 5, the committee recommends and I move to approve the 1 professional staff retirement. This professional staff person has 32 years with the district. 6, the committee recommends and I move to approve the 1 non-represented staff retirement. This is an information technology support specialist, been with us for 25 years. 7, the committee recommends and I move to approve the 2 support staff retirements. One of these aides has been with us for 27 years.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion, a second to approve PS1 through PS7. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried.
And then we had 2 updates. The first update was the status of district substitutes, and we all know all districts are having trouble finding substitutes. A lot of times our vacancies are filled internally and the number of absences are only counted if a substitute is needed. We would have to struggle to stay open if not for school staff stepping up to cover classes. A lot of teachers will take their prep and take a class from somebody else. Just for example, in the year 2019 to 2020, our rate for sub-fill was 90%. But in 21 to 22, our sub-fill rate was in the low to mid-70s. So you see, we didn't have as many positions filled. And then in our district HSA, you're going to be seeing this later today, but we were with BMO Harris Bank, and they're going to be charging us $13,000 per year to have our HSA with them. So we're saying we want to switch to the Associated Bank, which would charge the district $1,000 for their program. And this you'll see as coming up for action later on in the meeting. And with that, I move that the minutes from the February 7th Personnel Services Committee meeting be approved as printed.
Second.
We have a motion, a second to approve the meeting minutes of the Personnel Services Committee meeting of February 7, 2022. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Those minutes are approved. Thank you for the report, Sandy. Next, we'll move on to the agenda referrals information request. Is there anything this month?
Yes. I was driving home from Eau Claire today and heard a program on the teacher shortage. Evidently, about half of the educators that are working are thinking of stopping it and doing something else. And a number of things that are pretty serious are something that we need to tackle because it's happening here too. I would suggest that we talk about ways that we can hold each other up and proceed with that.
I agree with that, Larry. You know, we get a lot of publications that we get to read, and it seems to be a lot of negativity around public schools. And as teachers, I think people feel attacked for what they do every day. I'm not sure what the answer is, but I would challenge anyone that comes up with any ideas or reach out to people you know and ask the questions.
Well, we are a good district. We'll find something that will work to help each other.
Thank you, Larry. If there's nothing else, we can move on to the legislative agenda. What's new this month, Troy?
Thanks, John. So I'll be brief tonight. There's just 2 things I want to mention, and interestingly enough, they both happen tomorrow, so it's a busy day on the calendar. The first thing, Governor Tony Evers, tomorrow night at 7 o'clock, will deliver his State of the State address before a joint session of the legislature, so that will be available to watch live stream on Wisconsin Eye, among other platforms to watch that. And the second and final thing I just want to mention is get out and vote tomorrow. I know there's some people in this room that want to put their foot forward, and that's terrific. So tomorrow, 7 a.m. to 8 o'clock, polls are open, and you can go to myvotewisconsin.gov if you want to take a look at your sample ballot or see your polling place. For the whole district, the school board primary is on the ballot, and then for residents who live in Grant and Kellner, they also have a competitive primary for Portage County executive. So it's an important election tomorrow, a good ballot. So vote, and fortunately for voters, there have been interviews and questionnaires up until this point, so people have a feel of who they want to select. So be sure to vote.
Thank you, Troy. And I would echo that. It's the one right that we have that nobody can take away is our right to vote. So I encourage everyone to exercise that right. Next, we can move on to the bills.
Okay, I would make a motion that the receipts be noted and the bills be paid as printed.
Second.
We have a motion and a second that the receipts be noted and bills paid as printed. We have roll call, please, Breen?
Yes.
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 Thank you, Maureen. And that takes us into new business. Item A, possible action on employee appointments, resignations, retirement requests. Hi, Brian.
Hello. So you have one name on your sheet you should have in front of you. Chris Bondioli, Lincoln High School counselor, is resigning.
Okay.
I would make a motion that we approve the professional staff resignation of Christopher Bondioli.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the professional staff resignation of Christopher Bondioli. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, discussion and possible action on district COVID-19 mitigation measures, including moving toward a mask optional learning environment effective February 16, 2022. Greg.
Okay, so I'll direct your attention to attachment A, which was, of course, included in your board packet. And just to bring up a couple of points of interest. First off, should you see fit to approve the recommendation, we would communicate that with parents and staff either this evening or first thing tomorrow morning, and the implementation would be for Wednesday, the 16th. The thresholds that we are talking, which would be moving us to mask optional, and the thresholds that we're talking about, frankly, are, relatively arbitrary numbers, 3% and 5%. So 3% of individuals being COVID positive in a total building population, or 5% of individuals being absent from school in a total building population. Those numbers are arbitrary such that, they could basically be any number. I mean, we could say 1% or 10% or whatever. They're based a bit in reality, knowing that I would argue they are probably a bit higher, if anything, than what we would anticipate seeing. By the way, it does also provide us an opportunity, I think, to put some forethought in to what we see potentially coming down the road, so that it's not going to be a massive surprise. Just to give you an idea, I ran the numbers. Now, I'm taking the totals from our district dashboard, total building population, and clearly those numbers aren't static all year long, right? So we don't update building numbers every month or every couple of months, but that information is going to be, close to accurate. It's not like there's wild swings of hundreds of kids. So taking it from that, just as a point of reference, Grant, 3% would be 9 positives and 5% would be 16 absences due to COVID-related reasons. And their school population is 312. Then you can go all the way up to Lincoln High School at 1590, that'd be 48 positives and 80 individuals out due to COVID-related absences. Clearly, you can see that if those are the numbers we're talking about, that's not going to be something that happens overnight. And keep also in mind that it's a 3-day rolling average, so that if you would have 3 positives on day 1 and 3 positives on day 2 and 3 positives on day 3, that is not 9, your average is 3, right? Because it's a rolling average. So I am apprehensive about setting limits, because there's always that, argument, which I also feel is quite valid, of, okay, so fine, then there's 2 in a building and the threshold is 3. So that's not enough, or there's 8 in a building and the threshold is 9, you know what I mean? And so that's why the threshold piece is it's based in reality insofar as it's a number that's identifiable, but also there's going to be some flexibility in terms of utilizing that 3-day rolling average, so that you don't, pigeonhole yourself into a corner. With that said, I think that based on the recent trajectory over the last, I'm going to say week-ish, that those numbers are probably high, and we don't anticipate meeting those numbers. Because you also don't want to be in a scenario, in my opinion, where you're on, you're off, you're on, you're off, and I know some school districts in the state have utilized that approach. To me, that seems like a very difficult undertaking, where you're constantly calculating and recommunicating and saying, nope, today we are, and tomorrow we're not. So I think there's solid numbers insofar as it gives us some kind of a target. It gives us an idea of where we want to be, but also not to a point where it's likely to change. So that's that. The other thing is numbers-wise. So where are we at and what would give rise to this request? And for reference, and you folks know this, the board members, that is that the CDC has not updated their mask guidance for the school environment. So that is absolutely an accurate statement. But I would also mention that we haven't necessarily gone lockstep with CDC recommendations the entire time of this pandemic. Because if we had, we would have never been in person last year, pretty much at all, and moving in that direction. And we implemented the reduced approach to contact tracing and shorter quarantine times immediately. Our state and DHS came out with that guidance and gave it the nod 3 weeks after we had implemented it. So there's been a number of times over the last 2 years, if you take that into account, that we weren't necessarily lockstep with CDC recommendations. But what we have done is have conversations with our local public health department, specifically Sue Comferman, who's now Sue Smith. She is the director of public health here for Wood County. And then, of course, you folks know that we consult with 2 medical doctors, Dr. Olson and Dr. Falk, with regular frequency. And I can't emphasize enough that the proposal that you have before you is supported by both the Wood County Health Department and our medical advisors. Knowing that circumstances, numbers-wise, are unique. And I'd also mention that the turnaround time is interesting and I would say surprising. I mean, that's my take in talking with Sue at Wood County Public Health. Surprised as well just how quickly the drop took place in terms of positives that we're dealing with. And so I just took some numbers over the last few weeks, going back to, well, let's start with today. As of today, now there's sometimes a lag. So when I say we had 3 cases, it's possible that there was a case or 2 or 3 in other buildings that weren't reported to the district office yet. But as it stands right now, if I were to, somebody were to ask me, I've been notified, or we've been notified of 3 cases in the district. Now, there's 3 active cases on the dashboard, so that means there's a total of 6, but some of those roll off and some come back on, blah, blah, blah. You guys know how that works. But so that's as of today. Monday, going back to last week, Monday, February 7th, there was 7. Tuesday, the 8th, there was 8. Wednesday, the 9th, there was 3. Thursday, the 10th, there was 5. And Friday, and then spilling into the weekend, which we communicated this morning, was 4. And now I'm going to go to January 31st, so the week prior to that. 27, February 1st, 14, February 2nd, 7, February 3rd, 9. And then I'm going to go back another week, January 24th, that's a Monday, 32, January 25th, 21, Wednesday, January 26th, 43, Thursday, January 27th, 11. And then if you go back to Monday, January 10th, we had 24, and I did some of that week too. Tuesday, the 11th of January, 46. Wednesday, the January 12th, 17. Thursday, January 13th, 43. So you can see that we go from pretty wild and wacky. January was crazy, absolutely crazy, where we are, I would argue, averaging over the week 20 to 40 cases a day, basically. And for whatever reason, when early February rolled around, I don't know what the critical threshold was from an epidemiological perspective, but it's quite clear to me that both the number of recent infections due to how fast Omicron spread, as well as potentially the vaccination status of the population, and those kind of 2 things coming to some kind of confluence, have created a scenario in which a good portion of our population is either recently positive, so they have this, what they're considering a 90-day immunity, and or have been vaccinated, or in some cases both. And so then what you're seeing is that there's just less host people to infect that have neither of those things, and causing that precipitous drop. That's just me pontificating on what possibilities are and having that conversation with public health and our medical advisors. So with that said, excuse me, case-wise, things are looking pretty good. With the threshold in place, we would know somewhat preemptively if the story is getting told at a building or a facility where it looks like it's getting interesting again. And please note that if we do see that, those thresholds being reached on that 3-day rolling average, that would be addressed by building or by location, not district-wide. At some of our smaller buildings, just so that you guys are aware, Central Oaks Academy, for example, has a fairly low enrollment, but keep in mind, they're not technically on site, that's our virtual program, and they would come on site Wednesdays and Fridays, depending. First thing we do is just not have them do that. So that's pretty simple. Community 4K is listed on our district dashboard at a total population of 106, but those are dispersed around the district, right? There's the Y program and multiple programs throughout the district. And so those would be handled on an independent or case-by-case basis. Other facilities are as mentioned, and then thinking of River Cities, which has been mask optional since the beginning of the school year. They have 102 population total, that's staff and students, but because they have the morning program and the afternoon program, and spacing and you know, kids in the building and staff at any one given time rarely exceeds, what, Steve, 50-ish, give or take? Less than 50, and they're all at River Cities, which you folks know, so have plenty of space. So I don't anticipate anything happening there. The other buildings that I didn't carve out or mention just now would be included in that 3 to 5% threshold. And then also to talk about the mitigation strategies, the quarantine protocols, which are part of the mitigation strategies. If you think about what we've been doing, but then just mass optional is pretty much what the recommendation is. There really isn't a delineation. So that expectation of vaccinated or not, 90-day immunity or not, blah, 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 those are not developed by us. That's based on what Department of Health Services and so forth are recommending that we do. And the idea that we do it for another 2.5 weeks post-implementation is just the guidepost again to say, okay, what are we seeing and are we seeing problems? With our case rates, there's going to be positives and there's probably going to be quarantines, but it's not going to be gobs and gobs of people, one would argue. And it will give us an opportunity to review and communicate then with parents come the end of February-ish and say, hey, effective Friday, we're going to shift to no contact tracing, and basically if you're sick, stay home, or if you're COVID positive, stay home. And I would guess that there would be some kind of expectation about return dates, which would be communicated then at the time. In speaking with public health, we didn't get into that foray because if this is approved, we have a couple of weeks, 2.5 weeks to have those conversations. I'll create another cohesive communication, and then we'll send that out to parents and staff, prior to the March 4th date or deadline. I know that you've heard and read that there's other districts that have been mask required. Marshfield namely implemented that effective this week. So a very similar approach, although they did do away with contact tracing on the front end. So they are moving right to just dealing with positives staying home and people with symptoms staying home. We certainly could do that. The approach of having the intermediary for a couple of weeks is just to make sure that we have our feet under us and we know what we're doing. But I do think that, well, I don't think I know, that quarantine and isolation and contact tracing is what is just a ton of work and really difficult for our staff. And then, of course, super difficult for kids to be out of school. The days are less. There's only 5 days now that they're out. If they're feeling better, then they can return. We implemented those changes right away. But that will be probably the biggest thing to get rid of when we, in fact, can do that. So to put it all out there are districts that move that direction immediately. In talking with our health advisors, public health and our medical advisors, I think the attitude was, well, it's probably safest to go this route, but you certainly could. There wasn't hard table pounding and passion necessarily about what the approach would be. I do think, though, that 2.5 weeks, we've done it for a long time now. So 2.5 weeks to make sure that we get our feet under us and things are going just fine is probably not too big of a deal, given the fact that hopefully there's only, 0 to less than 10 positives a day. And as it's trending, it's going to be probably 3 to 6 positives a day, one would argue. So that is the proposal in a nutshell. Once again, we would implement with your approval. We communicate this evening or tomorrow morning with parents and staff to let them know what the disposition is, and then we'd implement Wednesday the 16th.
This question I have, Greg, is do we have N95 and KN95 or KN95 masks available for staff and students in the buildings? If they say now that these provide some protection for the wearer, would we have them available for people that wish to have them?
We do not, but there's issues with accessibility of youth sizes apparently. But in talking with our medical advisors and public health, they would assist us in helping people hunt those down. I do know that the county has N95 and KN95 masks adult size and for some of our older students. And so I would just invite anybody that's curious to give me a call or shoot me an email, and we'll do our best to get them lined up with something. So,
Came from Pick and Save, they had a bin of them.
correct. Yep. For kid sizes, it sounds like accessibility might be a problem. Adult size, I don't think there's an issue. And if it is that someone would like us to, purchase that on their behalf or something like that, we will certainly do that. But yeah, so we don't have a ready supply or stockpile sitting anywhere as far as the district is concerned. Yep.
I have a question. Have you polled the staff on the change, and what was their reaction?
I have not polled the staff on the change. We talked about it as an admin team and with our medical advisors. And frankly, we have 800 employees. There is not unilateral agreement on anything that we do ever, much less COVID mitigation strategies. And so, no, staff are not polled. And if I were to put money on the table, I would say you're probably going to hear roughly 50% say this is a great idea, I should have done it a long time ago, and roughly 50% say I don't think it's a good idea, and whatever. It's on a continuum. It might be 20 and 20 on either end, and then everybody's sporadic in between. So there's not unilateral and cohesive agreement among staff, as there isn't in the community either, in terms of the right approach, as it were.
We made the best decision that we could make at the time we made it with the information we had. And at the time, we had the conversation that, eventually, we would be sitting here like we are tonight. And I guess I'd like to give thanks to Dr. Olson, Dr. Falk, and Suzanne Smith?
Sue Smith now,
Sue
yes.
Smith, for their help and guidance with this, because I'm no doctor. I don't do research on patients. I read what's presented to me, and the community spread was real, and I think the hospital was full for a period of time.
That's a great point.
We're ahead of that at least right now, and let's hope that we don't get back to the point that the hospital's full, that there's no place for people to go, because when you hear of folks having to be shipped hours and hours away to have something done because their local hospital's full, it's pretty scary.
Yes, and thank you for reminding me, and I'm sorry to talk over you. But our doctors, of course, have reported this, and I also serve on the hospital board for Riverview Hospital, and number-wise, hospital-wise, COVID numbers are fantastic. So they're moving back to more normalcy here in the next couple of days and anticipate that those continue to drop. But January-ish time, when we were communicating on this every couple of weeks, it was quite interesting system-wide. So that would include, hospitals all the way up to northern Wisconsin, Michigan, and so forth for Aspirus in general. And things, at least locally here, they're in a much different spot for the hospitals, and I think that's very relevant to the conversation as well.
Go ahead, Sandy.
I find it very heartening that, our cases are so low in our schools. That's fantastic. And I think personally, my opinion, masking had a lot to do with that. When I look at what's going on in Wood County, it's the only thing that raises a little red flag for me. Because if we look at 119, that Wood County had 1,478 active cases. On the 26th of January, Wood County had 1,971 active cases. On the 2nd of February, Wood County had 2,222 active cases. And on the 9th of February, we had 1,830 active cases. That sends a little red flag to me that we have out in the community these active cases, and I'm just hoping that it doesn't transpire into our schools. But, new cases have also going down in that same period from 1,401 on the 19th of January to only 425 for the 9th of February. But when you just look at the entire of Wood County, I don't like those numbers.
Can I make a couple comments, Sandy?
Yeah.
Okay, so what's interesting is, I'll just out myself. I've been wrong more times with the pandemic as far as predictions are concerned than right. And like I read you the numbers, right? 40, 27, 32 cases a day.
And then it's like something happened in like 48 to 72 hours. And it goes from, open faucet to a drip or a trickle. Who knew it would happen that quick? But here's some of the indicators that I think are important. So multiple counties, I think I read today, don't quote me on the number, but something like 12 in the state, 12 counties are no longer critically high or whatever for their community transmission rates, blah, blah, blah. Another reason that attaching school metrics to community transmission rates, we shied away from doing completely. But interestingly, there's some, and I haven't read any significant research on the topic, but just conversationally, when we were dealing with Delta and variants prior to Omicron, a lot of the times what would happen is the community would start to change and then you'd see it translate to the school, right? So the community would begin to dictate what may or may not happen in the school. And with Delta, they weren't necessarily correlated 100%, but if we saw that there was significant community transmission and cases were on the increase, then clearly you'd see cases, rise in the school because we're not independent of the community. With Omicron, it appears that it's slightly, it's not slightly, but that it's inverse in that the school starts to see a rise in numbers and begins to drop, which is indicative of what's going to transpire in the community. And I can cite that because when we started to see in December, January time, when our cases were like, wow, what's going on here? The county they weren't great, but they weren't in the circumstance that would be correlated as closely to what we were seeing in terms of numbers. But guess what? They caught up. And so we're on, I would argue, if you look at their positivity, the nice thing to look at on the Wood County COVID-19 dashboard is you click on percent positivity, and you'll see that climb and provide these peaks, and you can see the Delta wave. There's data from last year in the Delta wave, and you can see the stuff that we're dealing with now. And you can also see, based on percent positivity, that it is a pretty steep cliff. Part of the rub is that the positive cases that are existing, if you have 2,000 of them, as we did not too long ago, those are going to fall off in a 5-day period. And so I would say that if what we're seeing in the schools does portray itself in the community, that's going to continue to drop by, I would guess, hundreds of cases a day for the next multiple. I don't know where it's going to settle at, just like I don't know where we're going to settle at as the school district is concerned. But it continues on this downward trajectory, and you can see that based on percent positivity. That is the number of people that come up with a positive COVID test based on the number of tests that they administered, right? And there's less tests too, because people aren't feeling sick, so of course they don't get tested, blah, blah, blah. That has been tossed around. Like I said, I didn't read a research article from some world-renowned, epidemiologist, but that has been discussed that the behavior of Omicron as a variant was different than prior variants, and that we may see school numbers changing before we see community numbers changing to the same degree.
I had also seen what Sandy was seeing, and I.
Can't hear you, Mary.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is it on? It's on.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. I saw some of the same things Sandy was in. I was surprised when I saw that it was on our February board agenda, because I didn't think that we were that close. I figured probably the end of February, because I saw that it was coming down. But our goal has always been to get our kids back. I mean, we want them to stay in school. So I trusted our local medical professionals, and when I saw that, the hospital rate had gone down, the drop in COVID cases in the community and schools, I think that it's probably time that we do that right now as long as they feel that it's safe for us. I do feel that now is the time to do that, and I think we've got plans in place if it doesn't work, so that's kind of how I feel.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I guess I just want to have Craig repeat that number. There's 3 active cases as of right now in terms of the district.
Okay, so this is where it gets confusing, and then when I leave, then it'll be, oh, he said this, but it's actually that, and you know what I'm saying. So
As of now.
yeah. So on the dashboard currently, which was updated as of, I think, this morning, is 3 active cases. But there were 3 reported to us today. So that might mean there's 6 active cases, or some of the 3 that are on there might fall off because they were still on there over the weekend. So it might stay at 3, it might go to 4, it might go to 2. Well, it won't go to 2 because we had 3. Well, it could have, because it depends on when those positives are reported. So sometimes we get a positive reported, they're in day 5 of their isolation, right? And it's like, well, we're not going to report that as an active case, we're going to report that as a cumulative case on the dashboard because they're past their quarantine or isolation period. So those things happen too. But in general, as of today, there was 3 active cases on the dashboard. And then there was 3 cases that were reported to us today. So there may be as many as 6.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that clarification again. I just
Yeah, it can be
wanted to-
confusing.
I want to just say, I echo what Mary said a couple seconds ago. I mean, we're in a really good spot where I think we can implement the optional approach. This lays out, if things don't go the direction we think they will go, there's options for that. So I just want to say we're in a good spot right now with the district to go the optional approach just by looking at the overall numbers.
I'm laughing because it's 4 cases on the dashboard. 1 staff member, 3 students,
That's terrific.
and
though.
3 from today. So, see what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions or comments?
I have some. I'm personally a person who has to be careful. I have a lung condition that if COVID came, I might be gone. And trying to figure out what I should do has been confusing. You hear some people say this and some people say that. And my wife similarly has to be very careful. So when I look at the situation that we're in with the board, a couple of ideas come to mind. COVID's not our idea. We're not responsible for bringing this, and we're not going to get through this worldwide pandemic easily. It's going to be sloppy. It's going to be sticky. We're going to have to be uncomfortable and do things that we don't want to do. Otherwise, we're just going to continue with it. And what if another variant comes that's even worse than the last one? And I feel when I look at this decision, somehow rushed into it, that I have to think about this a little bit more. And I think this district is widely respected in the state. I've been around here long enough, and I traveled the state in my business. And Wisconsin Rapids is considered at the top. We make good decisions. We have good people making those decisions, and they stick around a long time. And I've seen many, many wonderful people. So we have to be fair with those people too. To come in and say, that's all wrong. That's not going to embolden people to be better teachers. We need to respect them and respect the board. And sometimes I wonder if we're getting that respect. The fear is that we start out with this, and then back comes the variance. It's easy to let down. It's easy to say, hey, it's over. Well, we thought it was over a year or 2 ago. Then we thought it was over again, and it wasn't. This beast doesn't care. It just goes on and perpetuates itself. So I'm afraid of the future. And I'd love to get rid of this mask. I'd love to get rid of all the things I can't do and I can't go to, and my kids and all the other things. I'd love to get rid of it, but I'm just afraid that it's not going to be gone.
You have anything?
Are we ready for a motion?
Yeah.
I make a motion to approve the implementation of mask optional but strongly encouraged in all district facilities with affiliated thresholds and quarantine procedures as presented, effective Wednesday, February 16th, 2022. Additionally, quarantine procedures will continue until Friday, March 4th, 2022, and if COVID-19 numbers remain low, contact tracing and quarantines will cease at that time. COVID-19 positive individuals would continue to be excluded from school for a minimum of 5 days, as required by the Wisconsin Department of Health Services, and testing would continue to be recommended for individuals with symptoms. Should a need for required masking return, based upon case counts, the option to also reinstate contact tracing and quarantines may be reconsidered.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the implementation of masks optional but strongly encouraged in all district facilities with affiliated thresholds and quarantine procedures as presented, effective Wednesday, February 16th, 2022. Additionally, quarantine procedures will continue until Friday, March 4, 2022, and if COVID-19 numbers remain low, contact tracing and quarantines will cease at that time. COVID-19 positive individuals would continue to be excluded from school for a minimum of 5 days, which is required by the Wisconsin Department of Health Services, and testing would continue to be recommended for individuals with symptoms. Should a need for required masking return based upon case counts, the option to also reinstate contact tracing and quarantines may be reconsidered. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next item on our agenda is discussion and possible action to approve changing the district health savings account custodian from BMO Harris to Associated Bank.
Okay, so typically this would have gone through PSC, but I had it on the wrong section of the agenda. So it's the same, nothing is new from what you saw on the agenda for the Personnel Services Committee, and nor different than the information you heard from Sandy when she read the minutes. So again, just as a quick review, we're switching basically because BMO Harris was going to charge the district $13,000 to be our HSA custodian. Associated Bank is willing to have a one-time setup fee of $1,000. The cost for the employees does not change. So in other words, the HSA, the money that they have in there, they're not charged to have an account. They're not going to charge the district to have be the custodian. So we're looking to switch just carriers. Questions at all with that?
With that, I would move to approve of changing the district health savings account custodian from BMO Harris to Associated Bank with a tentative effective date of April 1, 2022.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve changing the district health savings account custodian from BMO Harris to Associated Bank with a tentative effective date of April 1, 2022. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, discussion and possible action on modifications to the 22-23 school year calendar.
Okay, after our first professional development day this year in September, I always send a feedback for the staff, and one of the things that was expressed was there was frustration by the staff in not having a day off in October as they've had some years in the past. Back before Act 10, there was the 2 days at the end of October where the state sponsored the teachers' convention, and teachers were off on those days to go to Milwaukee to that convention. Since that time, we've gone from having 1 day off for teachers, like a fall break, and then this year we had a PD day during that time, so there wasn't a break for the teachers in October. Teachers are contracted for 190 days of work, so what we try to do is we try to develop a calendar in that the teachers are working 190 days and we're still able to get students out as early in June as possible for families to have their summer plans and not bring kids back on a Monday. You know, we'd like to have the kids end on a Friday and not have to come back for 1 day. It doesn't always happen. It depends on how the days work. We also try to keep the same number of days in trimesters so kids at the secondary level get the same type of education. If they're taking a course, try 1, try 2, try 3. So there's a lot of juggling pieces. So in order to address this need or this frustration by the teachers, I had suggested that we would pose that October PD day as a non-contracted day, but instead that contracted day would be moved to the beginning of the school year. So we would have a PD day in August before school started. Several reasons for that is once there is a calendar that is approved by the board and it's put out to the public, we don't want to go back and change that calendar because parents have made their plans for the year based on what that school calendar is. So to have that October day off, we couldn't just randomly pick a day because we don't want to change that calendar and inconvenience any of our families. So the option to do that, to move it in August, made the most sense. So what I did then is I sent out a survey to the teaching staff to find out what their preference was, if they wanted to keep the calendar way that it was, or if they would like to move that PD day to August. We had 234 staff members vote. 157, which is 67.1% of them, chose option 2, which was to change the day to August and therefore have a non-contracted day on that October 28th. 63 people, or 26.9%, chose option 1, which was don't make changes to the calendar, and 14 people, which was 6%, indicated they didn't have a preference for either choice. So because of the amount of people that want option 2, which we would change that October 28th PD day to August, and then would have October 28th as a non-contracted day for teachers. Students are already off that day. It's in part of our calendar that you approved last year. So I'm bringing that motion to you for approval.
Okay. Any questions?
I would approve the change to the 22-23 school year calendar to move the October 8th, 22 professional day to Thursday, August 25th for the elementary staff, and a flexible day for the secondary staff to be worked out between August 22nd and August 26th.
Second.
Larry, could I correct that? You said
Yeah, you
October
can
8th,
correct
it's
me.
October 28th? Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve change to the 22-23 WRPS school year calendar to move the October 28th, 2022 Professional Development Day to Thursday, August 25th, 2022 for elementary staff, and to a flexible day between August 22 and August 26 for secondary staff. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Roxy. And that takes us to the last item, update on district referendum, RFP bidding process and timelines.
Okay, so I'll bring your attention to attachment C. Those are the big 11 by 17 sheets in your packet. The first cover page on that is a calendar or a schedule. That hasn't changed in any substantive fashion since the last time you saw it, just included again for your reference. And then if you turn to page 2, that basically is the sum total of all the projects that have been bid with low bidder awarded in the total on the right-hand side there. And you can see that the total being about $477,163 under budget for everything that's been bid thus far. Keeping in mind that that carves out still just over $1 million in capital maintenance. Remember that a portion of the $34 million was going to be devoted towards that. Other capital maintenance that were not necessarily associated with these secured entrances and renovations at Lincoln High School. And then there's also the Lincoln High School data project funding. You'll notice that's the last line, $550,000. And that's included in the $34 million total to give the grand total to $34,550. The reason being is that those dollars have already been acted on by the board and will be expended out of the levy override pot, not the bond pot. And so we needed to update the technology infrastructure at Lincoln High School. Since we're renovating Lincoln High School, it makes sense that it is part of the, overall construction approach, but that is why it's earmarked out and separate. So then, if you take and go through each subsequent page, so page 3 refers to the first item on page 2, which is Lincoln High School addition and renovation, and you can see all of the aspects of that as bid. As well as what the budget was and whether or not that came in over or under budget. You can see the total for Lincoln High School was the budget was $21,091,293. The bid day value was $19,803,16. So just on the Lincoln projects, we were basically 1.2, 1.3 under budget. If you look at all of those subcontractors and so forth that we have worked with, or that we've selected, pardon me, most, if not all of them, we have worked with in the past, and they are, of course, reputable. In most cases as well, nope, I'm going to check that. In every case, I'm not aware of any case, and Ed's not here, is he? I'm not aware of any case where we did not select a low bidder. So across the board, if you're looking at these, as long as it was a complete bid and it was on time, we did select low bidder on all of the projects, not just Lincoln High School addition and renovation. So then if you go to the next page, you can see it's Think Academy and Meade Elementary. Those were bid together because similar materials are needed for the cafeteria expansion as well as the new gym out at Think. And you can see the bid day value of the budget and then whether or not we're over or under there. And if you keep on paging, you can see that for every single one that's listed on that front matrix that you were provided. So when you total all of those things together, then you go back to the first number I quoted, which is we're about 477,000 under budget, sum total for the full 34 million. That is with 5% contingency and still $1 million in capital and other maintenance. So frankly, not too bad. I just read an article, I think it was 2 weeks ago, another school district, I'm not going to out them, but they're building a new middle school or renovating a middle school, I don't know which of the two it was, is over budget. Because as you recognize, materials and so forth are super crazy. One of the questions that you might ask is what accounts for the overages and what accounts for the underages? And it's basically all kinds of stuff. So on the Lincoln renovation, as an example, the electrical contractor that bid the majority of the work at the Lincoln renovation and addition came in $1 million, just shy, well, not totally $1 million, but pretty darn close to $1 million, under budget for what was proposed. Now, that's just for the electrical, contracting for that, the Lincoln addition and renovation. Then you can fast forward to some of the more recent bids as you move through that packet, and you see things like drywall, and it's 2 times or 3 times what the budget was, over budget. And it's all kind of grab bag in that regard. So, like I said, sum total, if you look at the overall project, we're looking good. If you look at individual projects, you might be like, what the heck is going on here? In some cases, we got 7 subcontractors that bid, or 6 or 5. In some cases, we got 1. It all depends on what was being bid and what project. And there's one other piece I was going to mention. Oh, if there's any specific point of interest you would like to see, because I have, and so does, of course, Myron and PRA, the supplemental documentation. So if you're reviewing these and you're like, well, I'd like to know who all bid on that aspect of the Lincoln High School project, electrical, for example, we have that data for you if you're interested in seeing those numbers. But like I said, we selected basically the low bid, a low appropriate bid across the board. So there you go. That's pretty much it.
Were you able to do much with local contractors?
Yes, so they get local contractors get a kick up the can for sure. You'll see based on just the accepted bids that there's a good representation of local contractors already. There are aspects of the project, however, that local contractors can't bid on because of scope or size. And so, drywall being one of those, you'd think, well, we've got a lot of drywall, different outfits around town. Did any of those folks bid? And I didn't see any local drywall contractors bid. And what they're telling me is because of the nature of the job that we're talking about. Oddly enough, some individuals declined to bid because they don't have the time to do it. They just can't do the bid because they don't have the time or the people to make it happen. And in a lot of cases, it's an aggressive construction schedule, so they got to have all hands on deck for, a relatively short period of time. So sometimes it's access to materials, sometimes it's access to labor, sometimes it's, a little bit out of their purview. There's a variety of different reasons why a local contractor may not, but there is representation and penetration locally as much as one would expect.
It's going to be nice to see these projects get started since the referendum was voted on. Seems like we sat out a year.
Yes, and Ron at the high school has been communicating with families about, impending changes. Lincoln will be the first one to get kicked off here, and of course, there'll be some disruptions in pickup and drop-off patterns at Lincoln, which should prove to be entertaining as we conclude the rest of the year. But he has sent out maps and a video and communications on how it's going to go, and we're thinking it's going to be okay, but clearly there will be some growing pains as time progresses.
Look forward to seeing that facility once it's complete with the quadplex and the track and football field being redone. It's going to be quite the facility.
It's going to be awesome. Yep.
Okay, looking forward at our calendar, on the 17th, we have the Council for Instructional Improvement meeting. The board election canvas meeting is on the 21st. We have a closed session special board meeting on the 22nd, and then that takes us out into March. So with that, we're adjourned, everyone. Thank you for coming.